producer, Max Thompson.
Hello, and welcome to Meet the Producers. First, I want to introduce David Silver, executive producer on Ancient Aliens. Next, we have Susan Leventhal, who's the executive producer with the History Channel. And last but not least, our co-executive producer, Giorgio Tsoukalos. So I've lost track of how many episodes it is now, but I know it's somewhere over 150, which is, in what season we're in depends on who you ask, but somewhere between 12 and 14. And we're currently in the production of 40 episode order, so it's really just an amazing... It was supposed to be one. It started out as it was going to be a 2-hour special, and that was it. And it did so well, they ordered 5 more 2 hours, and then 10 1 hours, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And so, for us, I mean, it's an amazing journey, and it's been amazing to see that people are. I mean, the ratings stay the same year after year after year, and the repeats do amazing, and people just keep watching, and people keep coming to AlienCon.
It's because of you guys.
And it's,
Yes.
Can
I ask a question? How many people here are here at AlienCon for the very first time?
Yeah. All right. Wow, that's great.
Thank you for coming. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really fun for us because we learn from you by meeting you and seeing you in person and hearing some of the questions that you ask and what's on your mind. That's also really helpful for us. So thank you for your input this weekend.
One of the things, obviously, that's become challenging after you get to 150 episodes is where, or you would think would become challenging, but surprisingly isn't as challenging as we often fear, is how do you keep coming up with more material, with more episodes? And it's not that we, with this show, come up with material. It's more about finding material. It's finding where there are new mysteries, finding what new headlines there are, what can we say that hasn't been said before, what can we reveal that maybe hasn't been revealed before. And it's exciting that, especially in the longer that we do this, every year it seems like there's more and more being discovered, both in the world of archaeology and looking at ancient civilizations, new civilizations that are being discovered underwater, things that are being found with ground penetrating radar and with new technology, new habitable planets being found, but it's really a lot of it does come from the feedback that we get from the fans, from you guys, and from just finding out, at every AlienCon we do, we come away with, I'd say, at least a half dozen more episodes where we find people are really interested in something that we think we've kind of played out, but there's always new things being discovered. We have a Stonehenge episode coming up in 2 weeks, and I was surprised. I've been on the show since season 1, and I thought we'd done a Stonehenge episode. We've never done a Stonehenge episode. So, it's incredible. I mean, we've certainly mentioned Stonehenge, but and then to find, as we start researching it, it's like, oh, there is new stuff. There's new things being found in terms of the DNA, about who the people were that built it, about where it came from, about how many different levels. So there's always it's an endless there's always new stuff to explore.
Yeah, and I would have to venture to say that there's not a day that goes by that something extraordinary now comes across the news, especially having to do with astronomy and the extraterrestrial question. And I am the one that sits here to say to all of you that the reason why that is happening is because of you guys. Because we have changed the paradigm with the show Ancient Aliens. Because 10, 15 years ago, it's because of you guys. these topics were not discussed on the front page of papers worldwide, and now all of a sudden they are. So, the fact that we can talk about these things in the mainstream, that is extraordinary. And so we have done this movement together. So for that, I would like to thank you guys.
Best show ever!
Thank you. We did a couple episodes this season early on. One of them was called The Badlands Guardian.
Yeah!
And the other one was called Element 115. Thank you. And you guys should know that both of those episodes actually came out of ideas at AlienCon. One of them in Baltimore and one in Pasadena. And these ideas were brought to us by you guys. And we like to, we encourage you to give us your ideas and what you're passionate about. And then we like to turn them into TV for you.
And we also, in the last season, or I don't even remember if it was last season or the beginning of this season, but we did an Antarctica episode. And we had done an Antarctica episode in season 9, but there was just we're always finding that people were so hungry to find out more about what was going on in Antarctica, what we knew about it, that we did another episode. We still haven't covered everything. We could do a third one easily.
Linda Moulton-Howe, who unfortunately is not with us here, Linda says to me and Max, "Hey guys, I know we did Antarctica, but we've just cracked the ice." Linda probably has 4 more Antarctica episodes coming for you guys, so hold tight.
No, and also, there's new technology coming out every day with ground-penetrating radar, with LiDAR, and all those different new avenues of technology. So, one of my favorite places, as you know, in the world is Pumapunku. And, there are new things that have been discovered there in the last 5 years that are extraordinary, gigantic, even bigger monoliths that we've seen before at Pumapunku. And all this because of new technology. So, when people are asking, well, how many more times are you going to talk about Pumapunku? I will talk about it until I die. Because there is something interesting about that place every single day. So, there's something new to learn every day.
And over time, there are areas that open to us and then they close. And then you wait long enough, they open again. So it's just an evolving situation with locations around the world.
Yes, but I would like to also go on the record that by and large, and I think Max and David can attest to this, we are most often received very friendly, and now more so today than, let's say, 10 years ago.
Yes.
10 years ago, if you remember watching the first few episodes, there were barely any, mainstream, academics from actual universities in the show. And if they were in the show, they were sort of taken kind of a skeptic side until we threw them out, the skeptics. So, I can tell you for a fact that nobody on Ancient Aliens, that we hold a gun to their head saying, you have to appear on the show. No, they now come to us. And the fact that we have so many academics now appearing on our show voluntarily, that right there should teach you or show you everything. That, I think a lot of these skeptics, but also a lot of these university professors have refrained from talking about the extraterrestrial question because of fear of being fired from their job or something like that. And I understand that. But the fact that now they're able, or many of them are able to do that and talk about these things, again, that is part of what I call the paradigm shift. And we are right in it. And that, by the way, also is part of disclosure. Disclosure is not a one-time press conference where they say, oh, ET life exists. Disclosure is a process. And we are smack dab in the middle of disclosure. And you're all part of it. We're all part of it. It's amazing.
And what Giorgio said is absolutely correct in terms of the people that appear on the show. When somebody doesn't want to appear on the show, it's usually not that they don't want to. 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, it's because the university shut it down. There'll be a professor. I can't tell you how many times we've had someone who was booked. We were ready to go interview them, and then we hear, oh, well, the university says I can't do it. So, and that's that. So, and like he said, we get it. They have jobs they have to worry about, but that is happening less and less. I mean, we've been welcomed to NASA. We've been able to shoot there which took seasons and seasons before we could do that. We've had people on the show that are professors at MIT, at Harvard, at all sorts of prestigious universities. So it's definitely become hasn't become harder. It's become easier over the years. And one thing I want to also point out is the places where they are particularly tough on letting us shoot there or don't want us to shoot there. There's always very strange circumstances, and like I bring up the Wedge of Ayoud, where you went with Eric von Daniken and what the museum, the curator told you about why it was in this back room, and can you talk about that?
Well, because they essentially, so how many, raise your hands, the object of Ayoud in Romania. So it is this wedge made out of aluminum. And this wedge was found, I think, in the 1960s at a depth that would indicate an age of at least 5,000 to 8,000 years. That's the stratum at which the piece was found, according to the story, because nobody was there when it happened. But what's interesting is that this piece of aluminum was tested, and it was more pure aluminum than what we can currently manufacture with our own machines. Aluminum does not exist naturally. You have to artificially make it. The fact that aluminum piece consists of more pure aluminum than what we can create today it's a mystery. I mean, how is that possible? Unless you propose some type of an extraterrestrial technology, or the avenue that, for example, Robert Bauval or Graham Hancock take, where they say that everything like this existed already in the ancient time, that there was a super civilization, and then either through a cataclysm or through war, everything came to a standstill and then it began again. Doesn't matter, whichever avenue you take, the fact that we have an object that is almost 100% pure aluminum is extraordinary. And that piece was kept under wraps, hidden for decades. And then in the 90s, it made an appearance, and there was one legendary Times article in the late 90s about this, and then it disappeared again until the day we showed up for the interview. But I think it took us a long time to even get the permits.
Yeah. It took a long time to track it down as well, because there were rumors that it was in this museum, but no one knew for sure, because it had been years since they said it was there. And then when we found out, they're like, well, we have it in the back room. And
they kind of in the basement, in a box.
And the archaeology professor who was quote unquote in charge of this, in his whatever transcripts of his conversations or the stuff that he wrote down, he is on record of saying that he is hiding this object because he knows that the object is correct. But if he were to show this publicly, or if this object would be out in public, then he should no longer be an archaeologist, because it would turn his world upside down. And I'm asking myself, well, why weren't you the first? You should have taken the first step to be that person and say, I'm an archaeologist, but this does not make sense, so what's going on? And he could have still remained an archaeologist, because I always think that, science is about asking questions, going out there to explore, and most mainstream scientists today, they think they know the answers to all the questions, and that is simply untrue. So, I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
Where was it? Where was it found?
Yeah, so we wanted to kind of just give you an idea of the process of how these shows come about. So when we get
underground.
Every new season, when we have an order, we have to figure out what episodes are we gonna do that we haven't done, what do we want to do that's new, and so there's a really lengthy process that involves we get the ideas from you guys, also from Giorgio and from other contributors. And Giorgio is very much a part of that process of, going through the kind of just the inception of like getting together, having a meeting where we just start to go through like, well, what have you seen in the news lately? What have you been researching lately, Giorgio? Or what have you, and David and I will kind of put together like, what are these ideas? And it's just you just start digging. I mean, it's really, there's no hypothesis, or usually there isn't. We don't go into it with preconceived, like what this episode's gonna be. It's kind of, you start with an object, you start with a story, and then you start researching it, see what it connects to, and it slowly sort of evolves into, so like certain episodes are obvious. The Secrets of Stonehenge, that it doesn't take a lot of thought. You just, okay, we're gonna go study Stonehenge. But there are things like with the Wedge of Ayud, for instance, where that was something where we started to look at, well, what could this fit into? How do we make, like, how could this fit into an episode? Because this is really interesting, and we really should study it. And so we start finding other strange objects, metal objects that have been found in different parts of the world, things that are both ancient or contemporary. There's another object called the bed sphere that there's a famous story around from Florida in I think it's the 70s or 80s. But we start looking at then also things falling from the sky, stories of like metal falling, where they say, oh, well, this came from a satellite that fell out of the sky, but then you find out that the government of Iran confiscated it, or you're like, well, why did they do that if it's just a piece of junk that fell out, from a satellite? So, and that's how it starts to come together. We put together, okay, we think we know what this is going to be now, and I don't remember the name of that episode, Medal of the Gods or something like that. But we come up with Forged by the Gods. But yes, that's it. Forged by the Gods. So, and then we send. And the great thing about working with History Channel and working with Susan Leventhal is it's really unusual and unique to be working with someone who has as much interest in the show and in the content as we do. So a lot of ideas come from her as well. All the time she'll be sending us articles, sending us stories, calling us to tell us about something new that she's discovered that will become an episode. So
also looking at your lists,
yes,
and saying, number 4, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. We usually start out with about a list of like 50, and then there's like 3 or 4 that Susan likes out of it.
And I'll say, convince me. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm like the.
Did you guys see our Islands of Fire episode about Hawaii? Yes. We had to fight lovely Susan for 3 seasons to do an episode about Hawaii. She said, David, Max, I just don't see any story there. I don't see an Ancient Aliens there. Well, after shooting this one episode in Hawaii, thank you, by the way, Susan, for allowing us to do that, we feel like there's a couple more episodes in Hawaii.
Is it because somebody got to go to Hawaii? Was that in the budget?
I might have had something.
Next time you can come.
But to her point, it took it took a few seasons before we could get enough together where she's like, okay, I see an episode here. I see that there's more than just mythology
and sometimes I think that's just what's meant to happen.
Right.
These things sort of, they evolve over time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes an idea just doesn't sort of fit in the season, and it doesn't make sense because we have other better ideas that just seem to pop. And so it's just like you have to really trust this process.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, what's helpful with in terms of when we're sending outlines to we send everything. I mean, they're very involved with the creative process. So we send the first what we call thumbnails, which is just like a 1-paragraph description of the episode. That becomes an outline, which is kind of outlining the 6-act structure, what's going to be in there. Then we send them the first draft of the script, and then there's 2 cuts. I mean, there's the rough cut that goes out, the fine cut. But at every step, when we get into the show, we're really deep into it, like in terms of the research and it's a lot of times, you're too deep into it to see that it doesn't make any sense. Like there's so many episodes that to me, as I'm watching it, or David, or to the producers that are making it, it all makes total sense. Susan watches it. She's like, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what the show is about.
Can I just say, Pawn Stars, all they do is watch a rough cut. That's it. They don't have to go through all these other stages of this. There's a lot of heavy-duty editorial on this show.
to my
I don't
mind,
think we've ever thrown out an idea.
no.
I mean,
Not-
once it's gotten into production.
There have been a couple. There was one last. I don't remember what it was. I just remember that Rob O'Brien, one of the producers on the show, was suddenly told, you have 2 weeks to put together an episode called Area 52, and that was because there was an episode where it just something fell apart,
instead of something else.
and it was like, well, we got to do something. And then when we'd had this kind of on the back burner, which also helps, is when we have certain episodes that are, that we're iffy on. It's like, okay, well, let's have some backups so that if something just isn't going to work out, whether it's sometimes it's that it's all hinging on a particular interviewee who suddenly can't do it, like there's like an expert that we really want, or there's a location. Like we're going to do an episode this season about Tibet, and that's come up numerous times, and the problem is it's almost impossible to shoot in Tibet. So those things happen, and then we have options that we can go with, but with the process of, I think Kevin has always said that he's like, it's torture, but like it's absolute, like every part of it is necessary. Like we've tried to figure out ways to make the process less torturous, and it doesn't seem to work, because you really need that to, like, because as Susan's watching an episode, she doesn't know what I know from having done the research, from having worked on it, and so she represents to me the audience. And so if she's not understanding something, then I know, okay, well, I'm like and then I'll go back and I'll look at it, and then you realize it's like, okay, well, this doesn't make any sense, because I know this and this and this, but the audience doesn't know this and this and this, and so it is
And all of these steps are so that by the time it gets to Giorgio, that you know that we have really done our homework, and that you're comfortable with it, and when you are when you're in it, that by the time it gets to you, that you're really with us.
I have to tell you that nothing has given me more joy over the past 10 years than to work with these people sitting at this table, and including Kevin Burns, because it is a joy for me to go into the office, because you walk into that Ancient Aliens office and there is electricity, there is sparks flying everywhere, because everybody is passionate and enthusiastic about the topic, and so I have to pinch myself every single day. And so my thanks goes to all of you.
It's
And
really
thanks
the
to
gift
you.
that keeps on giving.
Yes. I gotta say, one of the questions that we get asked most, I think, during the process of making the show is from you guys: what won't the History Channel let you say? And I gotta tell you, Kevin, you've probably heard this from Kevin Burns, the creator of the show, and he's absolutely correct. We are so fortunate to work with Susan Susan Leventhal and the History Channel, because they let us say whatever we want.
Yeah, we've never received a note back from Susan or anybody at the network saying, nope, this is too taboo or too dangerous or too much.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure how much they're paying attention. Because I think it's interesting that when the show Unidentified, which I don't know if any of you have watched, when that came around and they were pitching that inside the history programming, and I sort of stayed in my swim lane with this show and Unexplained, and they came in with Unidentified, and they're like, wow, there's this story, and I'm like, yeah. We know that story. We've been telling that story. So, I mean, we're really excited that Unidentified is around now, and that's a whole other group of people that are telling these stories from, but we work together, and this is, it's all, again, emanating from what we've been able to get done.
Yeah, it's definitely a process, and not to say nothing, but them claiming all the credit. The reason why it's happening is because of Ancient Aliens and people before Ancient Aliens. Eric von Daniken, who wrote Chariots of the Gods. He says hello, by the way. He wishes to be here. He's in South America right now. But this was all part, or is part, of the disclosure process, which began in the 70s with Eric von Daniken. That was already part of disclosure. And the fact that it's happening right now is a culmination of decades of work by us and other people as well. But then for somebody to just come in and then say, oh, well, I did it, forget it. No, it's a whole, it's an entire collection of people that have been doing this for a very long time.
I want to share with you guys a little bit about what this guy does behind the scenes. You've seen him, for 10, 11 years now on screen, but what you don't know is that he is one of the hardest working people in show business. We send him to all ends of the globe. We send him to ice glaciers. We send him to remote islands, non-Medal. We send him to the pyramids. We send him to India where it's 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 100% humidity, and his hair just goes... This man is a trooper, and you know why he does this? He does this for you. Because he wants for you guys to know what he knows. And we are very grateful to have him.
And Giorgio is also, when we have new producers a lot of times coming in, new seasons, he's the person who will tell them during the interview, like, no, that's ridiculous. Anyone who thinks that Giorgio thinks everything's aliens, they have no idea.
I love you, Max. Thank you.
Well, that's what I mean by the time it gets through us, we hope that by the time it
We
gets
hope.
to him.
But there's a lot of...
I draw a line in the sand, too.
There's people will come into my
Don't ask him
my
to talk about
office
portals.
and they'll ask
Portals.
the producers will ask my advice. They're like, well, how do I sell Giorgio on this? I'm like, you don't sell Giorgio on anything. He either is with it or he's not. Like he's gonna look at it. I said, if you can make a case, I said the best thing you can do is like have some evidence to back up what you're saying, because he's not gonna just say, oh yeah, because you think you came up with a cool angle. It's like and I think that's critical to the show, because it really keeps us honest in terms of saying, because a lot of times you get into a show and there's something that seems like this is a cool idea and we're going to go that way, but Giorgio will say, well, no, we're not. That's not. If you can convince me. And so, and not everything that ends up on the show is something that Giorgio agrees with. A lot of things aren't. But
yes, and that is what Kevin Burns says. That this is the reason why the show works, because we are presenting many opinions, all sort of in the same direction. However, they're different opinions. And some opinions I disagree with, and vice versa. But that is, I think, and according to Kevin, and I think all of us have to agree, that's why the show works. Because, it's truly extraordinary to have that many people essentially talk about the same topic. So I think it's tremendous.
It just happened this morning, before any of this started, that Travis Taylor and the rabbi were having a conversation where Travis was all about science and the rabbi is all about his perspective, and they were, and it just happens all the time, especially here.
And it's often in a bar, so it's a rocket scientist and a rabbi walk into a bar, and it's the beginning of the show.
The possibilities are endless.
Yes. Yeah, to be in on those conversations is quite something. In the end, it's the show. I think one of the reasons that it's been so successful, and one thing Kevin always says is that he said no show is really about what it's about. Like every show, there's something else behind it, and with ancient aliens, it's in a way the search for God, but not the search for God from necessarily a religious standpoint. I mean, it can be a scientific standpoint, but it's the idea that we're looking for answers to the most basic questions of why we're here, why we exist, where did the universe come from, when did it start, what's the nature of everything, so there's a lot of different ways to approach that, and that's why we have a lot of different viewpoints on the show. People that come at it from more of a spiritual angle, people that come from a more of a Eric Von Daniken, nuts and bolts, ancient astronaut theory perspective, and everything in between. But I think that's what What I've learned from really working on this show, when I started, I think 10 years ago, I was much more skeptical about, not skeptical is the wrong word, but in terms of looking at things in a secular way, or looking at things as, the idea that so many people have that science has figured everything out. That there's no more mysteries in the universe, and the longer I work on the show, you realize that there's a lot more questions that are unanswered than that are answered, and even the ones that are answered, not really answered.
Or the question marks, actually, once you investigate this stuff, they become even bigger, the question marks. And this is when it gets really exciting, because what the hell do we know anyway? We know nothing. And so, to me, I too, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Max and David, they know this very well, I barely talked or was interested in UFOs. Today, it is one of my favorite topics, especially the crop circles, because there we now have physical evidence that some of those crop circles are real. And then you have to wonder, well, how was it done? And, so I too have changed my opinions on many different things. In fact, while I'm already open-minded, I'm even more open-minded today than I was 15 years ago or 10 years ago when the show began. So, and I think that has translated to the audience as well, where, you can't, first of all, when you guys come to me and you say that watching Ancient Aliens to you guys, well, many of you, is family time, that you watch it with your children, you watch it, the parents are watching it with their children, and the grandparents are there as well, so it's a family thing. That to me is such a wonderful thing. It's tremendous.
And one question I get asked a lot is, when is Ancient Aliens going to start giving us some answers, giving more answers?
It's like, are you watching the show? Yeah, wait, I love watching the show, but how come you never present any evidence? Are you tuning in? Are you watching? It's all we do is present evidence, just because...
Ancient astronaut theorists say...
And just because somebody who is, who sees the evidence and then they don't agree with the evidence does not mean that the evidence is wrong. It means that you don't agree with it. That's pretty much it.
And when we're talking about evidence and answers, there's two different things. But the idea is we'll never end an episode with an answer, because that's not for us to say. And we're not in the show. The narrator, the voice of the show, is really isn't taking either point. It's kind of presenting here's what we know, and letting people like Giorgio and the contributors weigh in on what they think this means. But in the end, we may lead to a point like, could this be this? But it's always leaving it, because we don't propose to have the answer.
It seems as if we have a similar case with Chariots of the Gods back in the 70s. Because, Eric Van Daniken, his entire life has been crucified and crushed down by everyone. But, Chariots of the Gods had 239 question marks, including on the front page. And Eric always says that his critics seem to not to understand that there is a question mark on the title, because also narration on Ancient Aliens never ends on a period. It always ends on a question mark. And this is what's so amazing, that we ask questions and leave it open.
But I think that's why this works.
Yes.
Because we're including you. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just what we think, it's what you think. And when you ask a question and you're at home, you're thinking to yourself, well, what do I think? And then sharing that with the people that are in the room. And that's what's, part of the energy of this is just us being able to all be talking about it and figuring out what we think might be true.
Yeah.
What do you think, guys? Should we take some questions?
Yeah, we wanted to give you a lot of time this time around for questions. We often, people get cut off at the end, so...
Just have a line right here.
So yeah, we'll start right away.
And
you guys, in respect to the other guests, if you guys could come up to the microphone, tell us your name, and then get right to your question. That'll allow us enough time to get as many questions as possible.
Okay, my name is Stacy.
And questions would be great, not life stories.
I promise, it's not. I have the same feelings that you call. So, In the shamans episode, you guys briefly cover ayahuasca and DMT, and I'm wondering if you would consider encounters with the DMT entities as like true alien encounters, and if there might be an episode on that. I know Johns Hopkins has done a lot of research on DMT-related alien encounters.
Certainly an interesting idea for an episode, but to answer your question, if whatever you encounter on DMT or ayahuasca and all this, if those are the extraterrestrials that I personally talk about, no. But there are, in my opinion, different levels of existence. So whatever people encounter, and I've never tried it, on ayahuasca or DMT, I'm not opposed to the idea. So there absolutely could be something on that level. But are those the ancient astronauts that visited Earth thousands of years ago? No. Is it part of our human evolution? Possibly, sure. But see, I think by now we've all learned not to discount an idea. Because, again, what do we know? And if that helps to find out or unlock the mysteries of the universe, I say go for it.
Cool, thank you.
Hello, my name is Clarence Meeks. I have the evidence for you. Would you like to see it?
Sure. Okay.
Come on up.
Just
Right over here, sir.
Just right in front of the stage is fine.
Yeah.
Is that something you filmed up in the sky?
Is that something you'd like to send to us?
Really weird.
Okay.
Where do you live?
In Garland?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Why don't you come up
Thanks for
and
sharing.
talk to one of us at the end of this event, and we'll get your info. Thank you.
It's a
cigar-shaped craft.
white cigar-shaped craft up in the sky.
It looks a lot like what you saw in the Tic Tac video. Next
All
question.
right, next, please.
That's how magic happens.
I'm Michael. I'm from Farmersville in Collin County.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah. Listen, I was kind of curious as somewhat of your religious beliefs. Y'all do bring the Bible into some of the episodes and talk about certain things in them. And I've always wondered, Giorgio, if you believe in a higher power and where God.
Absolutely.
Where does the Bible talks about how the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, when you talk about I am the God above all gods, okay, plural, and that we will create man in our image. Now, how do you think that God fits into both our creation and the other creations that are out there in the universe? I think those that think that underestimate the power of the Lord, that He cannot create more than just us, I think is naive at best.
Well, I think that assumption, which oftentimes I'm asked, we're the only ones, or told, we're the only ones in the universe, the only intelligent life. And my answer to that is always, if that were the case, if we're the only intelligent beings, not just in our solar system or in our galaxy, but the entire universe, which some scientists are actually proposing, then that to me would be an insult in the face of creation, in the face of God, because it would mean that she couldn't do any better.
Much. It's been a pleasure.
And by the way, I don't think that that believing in God in any way, shape, or form contradicts exploring the extraterrestrial question,
Right.
because even extraterrestrials, the ones that have been here or the ones that will visit us, also they have questions about God and life after death and how it all began.
Would y'all ever have an episode about that? I've been waiting for that, about what maybe have been found out that aliens have spoken to others and said, yes, there is a higher power. We believe in that as well. And You know, we're here to bring those truths to y'all.
I enjoy. That's a very nice observation. You know, to me, oftentimes, you know, I'm often criticized that somehow proposing that our ancestors had help from extraterrestrials, that this undermines our human ingenuity. And that is simply untrue, because if human ingenuity would work the way some scientists are proposing it, then I propose, let's abolish any and all educational institutions around the world and see how human ingenuity works out. Because in order for you to, we're all the product of one thing sitting in this audience here. We're the product of education. Your first teachers were your parents. They told you how to, or taught you how to speak, how to walk. Then you went to kindergarten, and then you went on to elementary school, high school, and if you choose so, you go on to university. If you don't go on to university, you go on and have to a vocational school, or you learn to a job somewhere. Well, every step of the way, you're surrounded by what? Teachers, instructors. Well, why would you need teachers and instructors if your human ingenious brain can figure it all out? You would not have to be taught a thing. You would just wake up one day and speak Chinese. Well, that's simply impossible. So this idea that, you know, our ancestors came up with everything out of a vacuum, it's an impossibility. So the idea that we've had help, that we've had teachers in the past, it's a must. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when it was.
The mathematical skills and the engineering skills that it took
far
to do
advanced
things.
stuff that
Somebody
out
had
of the
to
Stone
teach
Age.
them those things. Had to teach them. They had to learn that from somebody.
Right, and that to me is not an insult. It's logic.
And I would thank God would want them to be here to teach us that.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm Rob. I saw a UFO as a teenager, so that kind of opened my mind to the possibilities that you bring forth on the show. So I'm curious as to whether or not each of you had an experience, or are you just scientists and high thinkers that put two and two together and came up with the show that is Ancient Aliens?
Max, David, Susan, have you ever seen anything?
Susan.
Oh, I have, yes.
I have, but there's one thing that I think is, it's hard to know sometimes what you're seeing in the sky if it's something that is, you can usually tell the difference between a satellite and something that's acting erratically, or an airplane. And one of the episodes recently that was interesting to me is we had Nick Pope went out to a location to where, and I don't remember where it was, but they're observing the sky.
Oregon.
And they have. I'm sorry, where was it?
Oregon.
Oh, right, yes. And they had they have software, they have something where you can see everything that's passing in the night sky. And so you can see if there's a satellite overhead, if there's a plane overhead. So that way you know that if you see something moving and it's not a shooting star, that if it's moving in a different way, that's not a satellite or a plane. Maybe it could be some kid's drone or something, but they did see something that was really bizarre in the sky in that episode. And so I would say, like, that sort of thing, I've certainly experienced it, but whether or not that's a UFO, I wouldn't say for certain without knowing, like, that there's nothing else in the sky. So I think it's possible that I have, but I wouldn't say for certain that I've seen something.
I think everyone up here, I think I can speak for all of us, that we're all curious people. We are seekers and searchers just like you, and we want to know the answers about life's greatest mysteries. I think for me, as a child, I was really, really curious about the sky, always looking up at the sky and wondering if we were alone, and always knowing that we weren't. So to me, it's a great honor and pleasure to work on this show so that we can examine these questions. And I got to tell you, in the 10, 11 years I've been doing this, my mind has been opened more and more with each year that we produce the show.
And just to give you a final idea about this, the one person that has wished all his life to see a UFO, and to this day he has not, is Eric von Daniken. And there's a really funny story. In 2014, August 11th, 2014, we were at this conference out in Joshua Tree, and at night they sometimes organize these night vision watches where you're given these military-grade night vision goggles and you can see everything up in the sky. And if you've never done that, I urge you to do it. It's one of the most amazing and fascinating things you'll ever see, and you'll ever do. And so that night, Eric, came with us, and it was my wife, it was Ramon, Eric, and a couple of other friends, and Eric is a bit of an impatient person, to say the least. And so after 10 minutes of him looking up in the sky, he's like, okay, there's nothing here. I'm going to bed. I will see you tomorrow. So then, he wanders off, and 10 minutes later, this really, really tall kid, he's like, guys, look over to the Big Dipper. What's going on over there? So there's 30 of us, 30 people, around 11 p.m. at night. And we look over to the Big Dipper. It's one of the most simple constellations you think of. It's the 4 dots, 4 stars with the handle, the other 4 stars. So you basically have this giant, dipper thing. And inside those 4 stars, it's dark. No matter where you are on the Earth, it's a so-called dark spot in between those that area. Well, what if I told you there were 2 additional stars inside that rectangle? And so all of us, the 30 of us, witnessed this, that over 10 minutes, those lights 3 times became brighter, and then they dimmed down again. They became brighter after 3 minutes again, then they dimmed down. And the third time that those 2 lights became brighter again, those 2 lights started to move equidistant from each other out of the constellation of the Big Dipper, and then now we all saw this, not many of us with the night vision goggles, but also people without the goggles, with the naked eye. So you tell me what we saw that night. I mean, all I could think about when I was going to bed that night is, what do the pilots look like? And by the way, they look like you and me. But to me, that was, and of course, the next morning we told Eric, and he's like, what? So, but, we were his eyewitness report, so we were on. Next.
Hi, my name's Jeff. Been watching the show since it started, love it, follow the phenomenon since a kid, but there was one thing that you guys did different this season in the opening that I love it. Took a great opening, turned it to a perfect opening, and it was the phrase, "We are not alone. We have never been alone." Where did that come from? What was the inspiration behind that?
I think we'll let Susan answer that one.
That's in a movie.
Well,
I don't honestly know.
We just felt was really important, but what they're referring to is that we worked really hard on the phrasing of that line because Kevin, and we keep talking about Kevin and not sort of explaining.
Kevin Burns is the creator of the show. He's been at all of the previous AlienCons. He wasn't able to make it this time, but he was. If I remember correctly, it came to us as a promo. There was a promo that Kevin loved, and so in this opening sequence, he watched it, and I was watching it with him, and he's like, "That would make a great open to the show," and then he proceeded to rewrite the copy for what we saw, so that it would be more of like a show open than a promo. I don't remember if that part was in the promo or if Kevin came up with it. It was in the promo. Yeah, the "We are not alone,"
and then we started fighting over the intonation.
Yes, we recorded that 18 times.
We still don't have it. I swear to God, we have over 100 takes of Robert Clotworthy saying.
Got it what I wanted it to sound like, which is. I'm not even going to say that.
We are not alone. We have never been alone. But Kevin wanted, "We have never been alone." And so I'm sitting with Robert Clotworthy at the VO session, and he's every time I go in now, he laughs and asks if we're going to read that again. Because
I'm standing in Grand Central Station trying to hear and saying, "No, that's not right. That's not right." So we finally get it. the way I believe the intonation should be. And for the first bunch of shows, they put that on. And then I'm watching a rough cut and I'm like, that doesn't sound like what I chose.
Right, because Kevin, after one screening, about 3 or 4 episodes in, told me, he's like, honestly, Max, I don't like it. He's like, I know Susan likes it, I don't like it. He's like, change it, just change it. So we changed it. And it'll probably get changed.
Nothing gets past Susan.
So go back to the other episodes and see if you can hear the last line, the intonation change. That's an argument that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks.
I literally spent hours and hours redoing that. I mean, and my poor editor Damon he sits there and then he's getting the timing right. And Kevin will be like, well, it needs to be about 2 frames before. It's you're coming in 2 frames late on that one. So okay, let's adjust. But that take isn't. Let me hear the other 70 takes that you have. So,
but isn't it interesting how just that little that it means different things to different people?
Right. Well, it's a great opening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few thank yous. I'm Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
I want to thank you for bringing Christianity into your program. And not tearing it apart. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We try to include all religions into our program where we can.
Yes, definitely. But you point out in the Bible where these things happen, and thank you. Giorgio, the glint in your eyes when you talk and the excitement in your voice grabs everyone.
Can't fake it, guys. You get what you get.
And the last one. I loved what you told the host of Oak Island when you were out on the island with the giants.
Marty Lagina.
Yes. What you told him at the end was fantastic. And I can't repeat it. It was about, at least you're looking. He didn't believe, but it opened his mind.
Right.
And now he's looking.
Marty, to this day, we are in contact, and it really changed his opinion. In fact, it was Marty who suggested to Kevin Burns that there are these megalithic structures on Sardinia, which I knew about, but I had no idea, because I had been in Sardinia when I was a little boy, but I had no idea how prevalent they were, and that these neurologic structures correspond with a particular part of the night sky when you superimpose a bunch of stars on a map of Sardinia, and it's absolutely extraordinary. So I'm really happy we got to do that.
And I think what really amazed Marty more than anything, because he has a lot of knowledge of engineering, and he wasn't expecting to see this when you went to that well. I can't remember the name of it, but Santa Cristina. And as you're looking down, they're looking down into the craftsmanship of the well as it goes into the earth. And Marty says to their guide, he's like, "Well, this is modern, right? This is modern." And she's like, "No, ancient." And he didn't believe it. He's like, "There's no way that can't be ancient." But so yeah, it was, I think, really eye-opening for him.
And actually, the reason why Kevin wasn't able to be here this weekend is because he is with William Shatner at Oak Island. So you
little cross promotion.
Yeah, it's I would like to call it synergy.
Right.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for being open-minded. It's very nice.
Thank you for watching. And thank you for getting it as a Christian, because a lot of people are offended as Christians, saying ancient aliens is demonic, it's satanic. You don't know what you're talking about. So thank you.
Hello, sir. What's your question?
Well, my name is Tim. I'm from Lubbock, Texas. I guess we're kind of a little bit famous for the Lubbock Lights. I happened to work with the guy that took the picture, Carl Hart. He's probably dead now, I'm not sure. But anyway, there's some interesting history about that I got from him that I've never heard anybody say. I just wanted to share it somewhere. And that was, he watched those lights for several nights in a row before he ever took those pictures. He was an avid photographer and decided one night to take those. And he leaned out his window with his 35mm camera and took those pictures. He also said that he went through a lot of grief for many years after that. In fact, he was even reluctant to talk to me about it, and said that probably had he known what he was going to go through, he'd have never shown those pictures to anybody. So, interesting things about that.
Well, I'm glad he did.
Yes, I am.
There should be more people like him with civil courage to come forward with whatever they saw or whatever they took photos of. So, for somebody, having done it so many years ago, those were different times.
Yes.
So we should all applaud your friend.
Hello, my name is Cynthia. And Giorgio, I have a question for you. If an alien came to you and revealed herself to you and began communicating with you, would you film it, put it on your show, and share it with the rest of us? Would you be brave enough to do that?
And the answer is a resounding yes.
The only problem is,
why would I not?
we just have to have a crew with him 24/7.
What would be
There are
the first
iPhones.
question that you would ask her?
How did it begin for you? Who helped you? Because I'm always told that, hey, so what? You're proposing that aliens helped us in the past? Well, who helped the aliens? Other aliens? Yes, absolutely. You play that game backwards to the very beginning of time, if there ever was a beginning, and that to me is creation. That is God. But any and all extraterrestrials that followed that are under that. So this whole idea that, we need to look at extraterrestrials we need to worship them or something. I've never proposed this. I don't go home and pray to aliens. Are you kidding me? That's an absolute absurd idea. And I hope nobody goes home and prays to aliens, because then you're not getting the show at all. How did it begin? How did it begin for you? And then the second thing would be a statement. It wouldn't be a question. It would be, thank you, I can finally go on vacation.
Well, Giorgio, thank you for being who you are.
Thank you.
Absolutely adore you.
Adore you too.
First off, I'd like to say, everybody, welcome to the final years of Global First Contact. What's coming, you guys have no idea. And you guys know where you got that we've never been alone. And you left out the part about, and we will never be alone, because you said, that's what I said when I talked to Travis and them, okay? Kevin said he was gonna contact me. I'm the discoverer of the Morgan Curve on Mars. I have a question for the audience. How many people in here would like to know, from a round of applause, the real reason that face is sitting on Mars? Next, can I tell them? There's somebody buried there, and 98% of you in this room know this man's name. You don't know. You know his name, and his name is transferred down through time for 450,000 years, and we were told this 6,000 years ago. You even know his half-brother's name, and you have no clue that you know his name. His name is Alalu. Does it sound familiar?
It's what?
Alalu, not Alulu, like one of the young researchers said. It's Alalu. You don't recognize it, do you? If I say Alleluia, do you recognize it now? If I take the last syllable off his name and I say Allah, do you recognize it now? And I got confirmation in February 2018 at the Bible Museum. And my wife comes up behind me, and I'm looking at the cuneiform tablets, and she says, they're talking about your guy. I say, what guy? Alalu. Where? Over there. And I go, and I listen, and the guy's talking Hebrew, Arabic, something weird. I hear yada, 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 Alalu, yada, 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 Alalu, yada, 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 Alleluia. Okay? His half-brother, you know his name. The flood wasn't caused because of rain for 40 days and 40 nights. There was a celestial event that caused the entire continental ice shelf to fall into the ocean, created a tsunami so huge it encompassed the entire planet. That's why the Easter Island statues are buried up to their neck in sediment. That's why Göbekli Tepe is buried.
I'm sorry, we have about 30 seconds left, so we're gonna have to move on. Thank you.
All right. I'll tell you guys. Kevin said he would contact me if he didn't.
Okay.
Maybe 2 more questions and then we're out of time. Or 1 more.
Hi, I'm Rich from Ohio. I just like Giorgio's take on the Black Knight satellite.
It's a huge mystery, and I would not be surprised if it is an object that was placed in artificial orbit around Earth to observe us. This is stuff that I've proposed 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I said that there are these Lagrange points where there's no gravitational pull in our solar system, where I am sure that probes are parked there that observe what's going on in our solar system. I am sure of that, because if we were to do that elsewhere, we would choose also these so-called Lagrange points. Now, as far as the Black Knight satellite is concerned, you know, if you hollow that thing out and it is some type of a rock, then nobody will be the wiser to understand what it is. So I'm very open-minded about
Isn't it beaming out a frequency? Isn't it beaming out radio waves?
I'm familiar with that.
I don't know if it could have been a hoax article or anything, but it said that.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a possibility in this day and age, unfortunately.
That is all the time we have. Thank you, everybody, for attending.